Hi, welcome to my channel, Zen and Fit. I'd like to thank all of my new recent subscribers to the channel. Your support is so much appreciated. I hope that the channel continues to grow with time, and I hope that you appreciate the content that is on this channel. And for any of you new checking out my platform, I talk a lot about mental health, health and wellness, and some general lifestyle topics on here. In today's video, I'm going to be covering what to look for if you're trying to connect to a licensed therapist. But before I jump into the video, for any of you new who are checking out my platform, if you could please do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe button. Now, there are so many different reasons why a person seeks out a therapist. It could be that you're looking for a therapist for yourself, or maybe you're a parent and you notice changes in your child and you think that they could benefit from therapy, or at least to be assessed by a qualified mental health professional. It could also be too that you're looking after your adult parents and you notice changes in them emotionally, and so you want to have them get evaluated by a qualified clinician. There are several disciplines that are underneath the umbrella of a mental health therapist that a person can seek out for therapy services. This includes licensed clinical social workers. In some states, they may refer to as a licensed clinical social worker as a licensed independent clinical social worker, depending on the state that you reside in. There's also licensed professional counselors, psychologists, which could be like a PhD or someone who has a Psych D. And there's also some other disciplines as well that fit under the umbrella of a mental health therapist. And since I am more familiar with licensed clinical social workers, since I have that license myself, I definitely will give a lot more details regarding what's entailed for a person to earn this title. One of the things that you need to have to become a licensed clinical social worker, you have to have completed a master's degree in social work at minimum. Then after obtaining that master's degree, then a person will usually register with a state that they're looking to practice in to become an associate clinical social worker. So they're not a licensed clinical social worker yet, because once a person graduates with their master's degree, they have to obtain a certain amount of supervised clinical hours under a licensed mental health professional's license. So a person who is an associate clinical social worker, they may be getting supervised by a licensed clinical social worker or another mental health professional from a different discipline, as long as they are licensed. And the reason why states have this requirement of people who are looking to pursue and obtain a licensed clinical social worker license down the road is because they want to ensure that this person gets the proper training, that they're meeting the standards of care. And so to ensure that, that's why all associate clinical social workers usually have to obtain supervisory hours by a licensed mental health professional in the field. It's like, think of it as when a person graduates medical school. After graduating, medical people with MDs, I should say, or even let's say DOs, they usually pursue a residency program, right? And when they're in their residency programs, they're being supervised by a licensed physician, because again, it's ensuring quality of care. They're learning, they're getting their training there. And so this same concept applies to associate clinical social workers. Each state in the United States wants to ensure that these candidates are getting the proper training, exposure, and experience before they can become a fully licensed professional, being able to practice independently on their own. So this is a standard practice, no matter what the discipline is. Let's say if a person is a psychologist, they graduated with their PhD or Psych D. The same thing applies to them. They're usually getting supervised by a licensed psychologist usually, and getting their supervisory hours, so that they eventually, once they get all of their necessary hours that the state requires, they will eventually apply for the full licensure. So that's across the board. Even though I was specifically discussing the process to becoming an LCSW, the same process applies to all of the other disciplines as well. And I do want to say that, especially going back to becoming a licensed clinical social worker, in addition to obtaining the supervisory hours that a person needs, you also have to complete usually national examinations. Part of the examinations includes taking a law and ethics exam, because each state wants to ensure that a person is aware of the laws to practice as a mental health professional, that you are aware of your ethics within your discipline when you're practicing. So most states require a law and ethics exam. And in addition to that, a candidate will have to complete the National Clinical Exam, which is a national exam all across the United States. So any candidate that's looking to become a licensed clinical social worker will have to complete the national exam. And there's a whole bunch of different questions on the exam, looking at a person's critical reasoning, how they would navigate certain situations based on person's diagnosis, the treatment that they would provide, and the list goes on. And if a person passes that exam, that's usually the last phase before you can become fully licensed to practice as an independent practitioner within the field. And the other disciplines usually have some form of clinical exams and possibly like legal exams that they have to complete as well. So this is usually the norm even among other disciplines too, like such as psychologists and so forth. I just wanted to give an overview of the process that is entailed to become a licensed mental health professional, so that when some of you are looking for therapists, you have an understanding of what to look for. Like, you'll see maybe on a therapist's profile, they'll say LCSW, or it may say Psych D or PhD. That you have the understanding, okay, that this person is a psychologist, or this person's a licensed clinical social worker, so that they at least are meeting the criteria of what is considered a licensed mental health professional, a licensed therapist. Some people refer to licensed therapists also as psychotherapists. That's another term that often mental health therapists are referred to as. So if you see a person in their profile says, for example, associate clinical social worker, you know that this person is still able to practice, but they're practicing under a licensed mental health professional's license. They're being supervised by someone. So it's standard practice for a mental health practitioner to list their credentials. So if they're an associate clinical social worker, that will be listed under their profile. Let's say if they're on like a website or something. If they're an LCSW, you'll see that credential. If they're Psych D, you'll see that listed. So if you're not seeing those credentials listed under a person's name, under their profile, wherever you find them at, that's something to really consider and should be like a red flag to you. Because if they're not currently in school, let's say they're not in a Master's of Social Work program, they're not in a Psych D or PhD program, of course they're not going to be an associate, they're not going to be licensed, then what qualifies them to be servicing you as a consumer? That's something to really think about. Because the only other times that people are able to provide services to the public is if, let's say, they're currently in graduate school. Let's say you're in an MSW program, because most candidates during usually maybe their second or third year of graduate school, they do have to complete clinical internship hours in their program in order to meet the requirements to graduate. It's just like, let's say, a person who goes to medical school. Oftentimes, medical students have to complete clinical rotations in their medical school program. But you will see that listed. It may say that they're a medical student intern. And the same thing applies to candidates that are in a graduate program. you'll see that the person says on their profile, it says, let's say Master of Social Work student or Master of Social Work intern. That will be listed. So those are the only exceptions where you'll see, okay, the person's not an associate and they're not licensed, but they are currently in a graduate program completing their internship hours in their program. But if that is not the case, then that is something really to think about as a consumer, because that means that that person is not meeting the criteria, the eligibility criteria to be providing therapy services to the public. So let's say if you meet a person and you're asking questions, hey, what is your licensure in? Are you a PhD, Psych D, LCSW, or whatever the other disciplines are? And that person says, no, I'm not licensed. They're not in a graduate program. They're not an associate. But they say, oh, I can provide therapy services to you. That is a red flag and something that you should seriously consider in making sure that you go with somebody else, because I don't care how nice or friendly or warm that person may be towards you, they're not qualified to be servicing you in that capacity. If they're trying to provide therapy services to you, they are not qualified to be diagnosing you. They're not qualified to be providing any type of therapy services to you. And so the reason why I'm sharing this information, because I just want to make sure that people are aware and know what to look for, because a lot of people out there are possibly getting taken advantage of because they don't know what to look for when you're seeking out a therapist. And I also want to acknowledge that if you're encountering a person and they say they're advertising themselves as a therapist, and then you meet with them and they're saying, oh, okay, yes, I don't have the degree. I'm not a psychologist. I didn't obtain a PhD in psychology or a Psych D in psychology. I don't have a master's degree in social work. They're not licensed, of course, because they don't even have the degree. Then that person cannot be providing therapy. And if they are saying to you that, oh, okay, I'm going to be doing life coaching to you, though. If you're looking for a therapist, there is a major difference between therapy and life coaching. Life coaching is not mental health services. They're not providing therapy to people. Anyone out there can honestly be a life coach. But when it comes to providing therapy services, you have to meet a certain criteria to be able to be providing therapy, especially as a licensed mental health therapist. That means that that person has completed their educational requirements and the licensure requirements to be practicing independently as a licensed mental health therapist. So that's also something I just wanted to clarify. So if a person you're encountering is saying, oh, I can address your anxiety because I can provide life coaching, that should be a red flag as well. Now, there are therapists out there who will provide therapy services, and they may also offer life coaching services. So if, let's say, you're interested in life coaching, but you also want to be evaluated for, or to at least see if maybe you're suffering from anxiety, meeting with a licensed mental health professional is the way to go, because that licensed professional can provide life coaching to you, and then they can also provide therapy services when necessary to you as well. So that's something to look for. Just looking for a therapist that lists under their profile that they provide life coaching services in addition to therapy services, because there are licensed mental health professionals that do that type of work. And I do want to acknowledge that just because a person is meeting all of this criteria, like they are licensed and so forth, it doesn't mean that they're going to be a great therapist or the right match for you. So even when you're meeting with a clinician and you're initially going through the assessment phase, if you feel like you're not clicking with that therapist, you can always connect to a different therapist out there. Things happen. Sometimes personalities or whatever the case is not meshing. And so you have a right as a consumer to meet with another prospective therapist. It's the same thing happens just as when we're meeting with a physician for the first time. Sometimes you may meet with a doctor, a medical doctor, I'm saying, and it's just not a right fit. You're not meshing well with that physician. So this happens all the time, and you could just let your therapist know, hey, this isn't working for me. I'm going to just connect to a different therapist. That's the norm, or not to say the norm, but it happens a lot. And so don't feel bad about it, because your healing journey is your own, and you want to make sure that you have a good rapport with the clinician that you're connecting with. And for whatever reason, sometimes things just don't work out with a certain therapist, and that's okay. You can just easily switch therapists, just like we switch medical providers from time to time. I just wanted to share some general parameters of what to possibly look for when you're trying to connect to a therapist. Of course, this video is not intended to provide any type of therapy services whatsoever. This is just an informational video. And hopefully some of you found this video to be helpful and can possibly share this video with other people out there who may be looking to connect to therapists, and maybe they're unaware or don't know where to start, or they're not aware of what to look for. So if you could please do me a favor in the meantime, if you could please hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already done so. And until next time, please take care of yourselves.